Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SoundstageEDU. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We planned this is an audio recording out of a Zoom meeting. We originally planned this as a round table. And when we do round tables, we usually have 30, 40 people show up, and we have a nice, vibrant conversation. Well, unfortunately, life got in the way. I got busy. I didn't plan well. And that's kind of sad for someone who plans events for a living. But I didn't plan well. That's my fault. And as a consequence, we only have 2 people here, so we decided to pivot a little bit, and we're just going to have a discussion. And it's going to kind of lead into the types of discussions that we're going to have moving forward, except we're going to stream them live into the groups or onto the page and into the groups. However we're going to do it. I'm still figuring that out. I got that set up, but we're going to have more parent engagement. That's the idea. We see a lot of discussions here, and honestly, they're not really discussions. We see a lot of arguments. We see a lot of opinions, and we have nobody really discussing what works for them and what might work for another group, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where the roundtables came from. And we learned pretty quickly that we could have good conversations and come away with good ideas. And I have Christine on here with me. She's been a fan for a while. Probably from the beginning, because we haven't been doing this for too long. But she told me before we started this recording that she's made connections with other boosters in the area and probably elsewhere. And that's what this is supposed to do. That's how this is going to work, is we get perspectives and ideas, and we learn lessons from one another. And I'm no different. I'm learning from you guys too. I see new things creep up every day inside of the multiple groups that I'm a part of. Sometimes it's shocking, sometimes it's disheartening, sometimes it's scary. And when I say scary, I'm talking about compliance and risk and compliance drift inside of the IRS, because we are overseen by the IRS. Well, a lot of us are. And some of us are just casual, but we're also going to have cultural drift in groups like that. And we just oftentimes don't understand what's going on or how to fix it. Because I'll be honest with you, every time that you challenge something inside of your organization, there's a very good chance that you're challenging tradition. And when you challenge tradition, people don't like it. So what we want to talk about here is just really, we want to talk through what booster life actually feels like heading into summer. Because it's, what day is it? It's June 20th. It's the day before Father's Day, 2026. And summer's in full swing. Drum corps season's in full swing. There are kids marching in drum corps. There are our kids getting ready for band camp. I got my kid out in the driveway spinning a flag, getting ready for color guard. So we're all participating in these activities that are leading up. And part of that is we got a lot of new parents coming in. We've got a lot of new faces walking into our booster meetings, and we oftentimes don't know how to interact with them or engage with them. Or sometimes they don't know how to engage with us, because it can be scary when you're the new person walking into a room full of people that seem like they already know each other. So you feel like an outsider. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we talk about problems, Christine, tell me where you are in the booster journey. Are you brand new, somewhat experienced, or have you already lived through a few seasons?
Yeah, I've definitely already lived through a few seasons. My kid's going to be a junior this year. He started when he was in 7th grade. I've been in my role as VP for 2.5 years now.
Excellent.
Started with just getting my toes wet and just wanted to see how things go, because I tend to just jump in head first, and I decided not to do that this time because we were new to the whole community and everything. So got my feet wet just watching, and then now me and my husband and another handful of people kind of head start all of it.
So when you hear the word booster, what do you think most parents believe that means?
I honestly think most parents think booster as just fundraising and financial. I did too at first. I come from a musical background, so my parents being part of the band booster, I knew a little bit more of it going into, but I think a lot of parents think is just some of the means just so that they know what's going on, maybe because their kids aren't communicating with it, and then just fundraising. It's so much more than that.
Right. And you've seen me discuss that a lot. And I even see friction inside of the groups that I'm a part of when I make the statement that every parent's a booster. And I will see some parents, like, they'll kind of ruffle up against that. They're like, no, I'm not a booster. I'm just here for the meeting. I'm like, you're a booster. And that a lot of that comes from we have a lacking in the definition of what a booster actually is, or we just have a misunderstanding of what it is. I mean, to me, booster is in the name. It's a booster. You're there to boost the program. And that isn't always just a financial boost. Sometimes it's a cultural boost. Sometimes it's a policy boost. Sometimes it's a structural boost. Sometimes it's a boost in just how we do things, which is structural. And so with that in mind, what did you think boosters did before you actually got involved, and how did that compare to the actual reality of the situation?
I'm sorry, I missed your question. What was the question?
What did you think boosters did before you got involved, and how did that compare to the actual operational reality of what you stepped into?
Well, like I said before, I saw my parents do it when I was in high school, so I had a little bit of an idea, but it was still a culture shock. The amount that goes into specifically a band booster. It's not just making sure the kids are ready for competition, all that stuff. Like, even before I was a board member, the back of boosting and being there for the kids, in every which way as far as what the program needs. That's what they're here for. We're here to help with whatever the program needs at our capability. And that entails a lot more than what I even realized before we got part of the organization.
Perfect. Well, this next question is one that I actually asked the high school band booster organization where my kid is going into, and I was really surprised by their response to it. Not that I was expecting anything, weird, but what they relayed. Because what this first meeting was that I went to was the opening part of the meeting was a parent Q&A. It was a Q&A session for the brand new parents, for the freshman parents, so I was there. And some of these people know who I am. Most of them don't. And the question I asked is, and I posed this question to you, is what is one thing you wish someone had explained to you before you started as a booster this year? So, framing that question, what's one thing you wish someone had explained to you early on?
That's a tough one, because it differs whether you're a board member or an actual just booster helping out where you can. I got dumped into the board position and didn't know what to expect. But if you're willing to put in the work, I think the one thing that I would have known is how much more of a time commitment it is. If you really want to be involved in all aspects of it, it does take a big time commitment. I think that's the biggest thing that, I knew it was going to take a lot, but I didn't know it was going to take this much. And then it just got even more as I got to be a board member.
Right. It is a lot. And no one ever tells that. No one ever explains that. And I mean, it's different when we're talking about volunteers, just the volunteers helping out versus the person that's actually, and I guess this is where the confusion comes from, versus someone who's actually boosting the group, someone who's sitting on the board, someone who's actually making the decisions. And no one tells them that, because we talk about, oh, just come do a 30-minute shift. Come just hang out with us for this. Just do this one thing. And those things turn into board positions, as I'm sure you're well aware, because you get deeper and deeper in the organization and you see increasing value within the organization as it relates to your kids as they're growing. And so you want to do more. And I think a lot of parents get caught off guard when they start getting deeper and deeper into the trenches, and then they get this feeling like, well, I can't leave now because they depend on me, but I'm so burnt out. And that affects everything. But when I asked the group that I walked into, what's one thing that a parent told, or what's one thing you wish that you understood before you came here? I was really surprised to hear the response from the board members to be, I wish someone had explained the jargon, the acronyms that happen, because they felt ousted by the majority group as a whole, because those parents that have been there for a while kind of had their own language, their own vernacular, their own way of communicating. And that it wasn't set up that way to ostracize these parents, but they felt that way because they didn't know what anyone was talking about. I live in Kansas City, the Kansas City area, and there's a band competition that the high school band that my kid is going into goes to every year that's called Neowalla. And people were talking about the Neowalla competition, or they would just refer to it as Neowalla. And none of the new parents knew what that meant. And then they caught wind of, oh, well, it's a band competition. And the parents didn't know what that was, because there was no sharing of what it is that we actually do here, that we do within the band, that makes any kind of sense unless it's explained to them by another parent. Because your kid may come home and say, hey, we're going to Neowalla next week to compete. And you're just like, cool. Great. What do I need to do anything? And some parents don't even, say that. They're just like, cool, and they move on. But I was really surprised that the biggest thing that a lot of them said they wish they knew really pertained to logistics. Where are the kids going? What are they going to do? And as a result of that, the group I'm a part of, and this is kind of a quick glance of their agenda from the last meeting, they have every date, every event spelled out on their agenda now so that the parents understand what's coming up. And that was in the first meeting. So kudos to them for doing that. But I feel like one of the biggest things that parents are afraid of stepping in is they just don't understand what to expect.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That is definitely, if you're not from it, like I said, I saw my parents do it. I'm very musical background, so we have an idea. But some of those kids were maybe they're sports kids instead, and their kids want to do band. We have a couple of those that they've come and said, we're sports parents. We don't know what to expect, and we definitely got some of that. That actually changed last year with our new director too. We kind of changed our narrative as far as new parents coming in and what to expect, because we were realizing that there's a lot that just didn't even know anything, and didn't know how much was involved with it, and didn't know even where to start. And like you said, you have those veteran parents that have our own language, and so we're trying to incorporate them into it and be like, okay, well, this is what we're talking about, this is what this means. And so we've actually changed that this year with the new director and everything too.
Yeah, and one thing and you probably know this, and I've started to really notice that there is a tremendous cultural difference between sports parents and arts parents. And those folks that come in, a lot of the people that are coming into the high school marching band and the high school arts programs probably came from sports, because most of us started in sports in middle school. And they're just, I'm trying to figure out how to say this gently. They're a different breed. They really are. And they don't have the empathy or the nuance that a fine arts student has. And that's nothing wrong. I mean, we're talking about a totally different universe here. And I feel like as directors, as board members, we need to find those parents that are coming from the sports world and really help them adapt to the differences that we're going to have here inside of the fine arts world, inside of a marching band, because it's a lot. And here's what I found very interesting. My wife's grandfather used to be a band director, both at the high school and the collegiate level. And she was going through some archived articles from the newspaper, and she brought one to me that he wrote. It was an op-ed that he wrote that was talking about how there were more students competing on the stage, performing on the stage at the KSSHA or whatever it is, the athletics or the activities association. I can't remember what it's called, but the state's activity oversight group. That do all athletics, that do all arts, that do all kind of competitive type of deals for the schools in the state of Kansas. And in that op-ed, he said there were 10 times more students performing music than all the athletes combined in the state of Kansas. And this was an article written quite a long time ago, which really said something to me, that the arts actually have more presence. But one of the things we talk about more than anything else is that athletics are stealing all the thunder. And they're really not. It's just the lens that we're putting it in, and it's how we're reacting to it. But, letting the parents know, and I was in a discussion with someone not too long ago, I think it was this week, where the kid was a brass player and wanted to go to a clinic that was put on that was going to be run by the Blue Devils. So great opportunity for a brass player to go sit underneath that kind of instruction. And the boosters for that group were going to pay a scholarship to get some of their kids to this camp. And one of the kids' dads said, no, music is just a hobby. We don't need to waste our time with this. And the parent was, of course, crushed over this, or the student was crushed over this, and this booster board member was crushed that this parent said that. And they didn't know how to go about addressing that. And I think a lot of that comes from that differing culture between the sports culture and the music culture. And also in this article, when it talked about sports versus music, one of the things it said in sports about sports is that 99% of those kids that are competing in sports at the high school level are not going to go on to a professional level. And roughly the same amount of those kids are not going to go on to the collegiate level either. It'll stop at high school. Whereas the music student can continue. They have more access, more opportunity to grow inside of their craft. But also the thing that we all know as parents is the life skills that the fine arts bring for our kids, the learning how to deal with hard things, the learning how to experience loss or defeat in a graceful manner, how to celebrate our victories in a quiet manner, an empathetic manner, and just how to work with a team of people that are dealing with conflict and also dealing with that loss and negativity that can come with the competitive cycle of what we're doing here. So I feel that we've got quite a good grasp on the difference. We just need to learn how to communicate that with our incoming sports fans, because you're going to get a lot of friction from them, especially when the schedule starts to ramp up, especially when band camp comes around and we're saying, hey, we need your kid for 2 weeks. And I know you had your summer vacation planned. I'm sorry. And I mean, we're going to lose kids to summer vacation. That's just the way it is. But also that band that your kid is going into, you had the information ahead of time that this is when we're doing the band camp and this is when we're going to do the bulk of our summer rehearsal. And in many cases, it's mandatory and you need to be there. But your sports parents are going to push against that. Even though if they had a kid going into a high school sport, they're going to have a summer camp too, and they're going to be okay with it. It's just a different perspective from that type of parent. So with that being said, what do new families usually not know yet that they desperately need to know before band camp and rehearsals, clinics, or even the first big event that you have on your calendar?
The biggest thing is they have to be there. We put out our schedule, we already have our schedule out now before school was even out. And last year we did too, and we had some people that didn't make the competition because they pulled the whole, it's okay if it's not like a sport or anything like that. If you miss it, that's part of your grade.
Right. So with that in mind, where does the summer communication have a tendency to break down, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's when the kids don't take the information home and they're not on the apps that they're supposed to be and stuff like that to communicate. We have some parents that are part of like our band app that we use, but then they say, I didn't see it. Like I've had several parents who I've actually sent the schedule to them, even though we've posted it everywhere. And then they're like, we're not going to be here because of A, B, C, and D. And it's like, well, you got this schedule before you even got out of school. So
Yeah, and that's frustrating, and that's a frustrating point for a lot of parents and a lot of boards and a lot of directors. And I mean, we're in some of the same groups, so you see that question happen all the time. The parents say they don't get the information. What do we do? What app should we use? How should we communicate? And my response to that is use all of them. Because at our house here, we have the band app in our program. We have the band app for the marching band. We have the band app for the theater. We have the band app for my kids' cross-country team. They all use this app. It's not just for band. They all use this app to facilitate communication with the parent body. But what I find interesting is my wife and I are both on the app for the band. And there was a period of time where I was getting the notifications and she wasn't. And we both had it set up the same way. So there's deficiencies within the app itself that may not ever be addressed. And that's just how technology works. So within the theater, we have the band app, but I'll be honest with you, I've never actually used it. It's there, but I've never used it. But I also use Gmail, the G Suite, for the theater booster. We also use Google Groups. We also use text messaging trees that we have set up. And we also have an email chain that comes from the directors that, stand outside of the boosters. And they communicate with parents. They also have the bigger parent list. And they send information directly to parents. And then they send information to the Google Classroom that they're connected to because we're within the district. And then there's meetings that they can come to, or, most don't. And there's, and I'm a big fan of sending back a paper analog document with your kid to bring to the parents and have the parents sign. And just having that extra layer, and that signing is a big part of the accountability, that helps close the gaps. But even when you do all of that, as well as I do, there's going to be a parent that says, well, I had no idea. And that's just a battle that we're going to have to know exists and that we're going to have to learn to deal with when it comes. But we can also do what we can to cover as many of the bases as possible.
Yes, there's always that one or two parent that, I've got my regulars that I know, okay, yeah, even though we put this out, let me send them a text message just in case.
Mm-hmm. So what do you feel is information that parents need earlier than they usually get it?
I think one thing that our band director actually did very, very good, because we're a very small band. Like we have 7th through 12th, and we only have 40 kids in our band. Like we're a 2A here in Texas. And our band director this year, which we have a new director and he's done a phenomenal job, but what he did was he actually sent home a new parent packet to the people that are incoming to the marching band, those 7th and 8th graders that are coming into marching band as new parents. It's specifically just a parent handbook of what's expected. Here are the dates, these are the practices, and a little snippet of, they're going to be working their butts off, right, but this is the reward for it. And then we were able to put a little snippet of the booster thing in there too, kind of like what we are, what we do. And we've been these past couple of years, we've been doing really good with Jess, because a lot of our problem, it being small, is everybody assumes that the band booster is specifically just for marching band.
Right.
And we've been trying to get away from that narrative a lot. Like we've done a lot with the junior high band. We've done a lot with our elementary program to show that we're music in general. We have one act play, and we donate our band trailer to haul their props to them because, we feel like they don't have the support either. So instead of just band, why don't we be the whole arts thing? And so we put in that packet, what we do, that, we've helped your kid from the beginning all the way to now, and we're going to continue to help them. And if you want to be a part of it, this is what we do.
Right. And
really broke it down to them as far as, marching band's the most rigorous part of it, but during concert season, we do A, B, and C, and D, or, when we have our Christmas parties and all this other stuff, we're the ones that put it on and help support.
I think a lot of that misunderstanding, or it's not really misunderstanding, but a lot of that disconnect comes from the fact that the marching band just simply is the most visible part of the program. Kind of like, you're in Texas. So, the the marching band is just as much a cultural part of your school and the identity of your school as is the football team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Football is huge in Texas, and therefore so is your marching band. It's a huge part of the school's identity. Those uniforms mean a lot. The banners mean a lot. The fight song means a lot. People will walk away from your schools and still know your fight song 30 years later. I'm 30 years later from high school. I don't remember mine. I don't remember it at all because I went to high school in Florida and in Oklahoma. And yes, football was kind of big. I started the high school that Emmitt Smith went to, but I don't remember my fight song. If I heard it, I wouldn't even know if that was it. But speaking of Texas, you just kind of pushed me in another direction, and that it's just where I want to go because now I have a Texas booster on this recording with us, and I just did a long episode on the podcast. I haven't put it up yet because it's long and I need to go through it and make sure I didn't really mess it all up. But I talked about Texas boosters because you guys are playing from a different playbook. You guys have the UIL. So for our parents that are listening that want proof that Texas is different. I mean, everything's bigger in Texas, right? So everything's bigger in Texas. So remember the Alamo. So tell us, how does the UIL affect the way you guys operate?
So I don't know anything other than UIL. I originally lived in California, so things were even more completely different as far as marching bands go in California when I grew up.
Yeah.
So it was all very foreign to us when we moved in here and got part of the program. There's definitely a learning curve with the do's and don'ts, particularly with the boosters. On top of that, I can say that I actually contacted UIL to ask them as far as when we were planning our Disney trip 2 years ago. And the fun thing, like something that you have touched on numerous times about individual funds and all this other stuff. Like I wanted clear, concise for that. And I even called and spoke with a couple of UIL people, and they basically told us, well, you could do whatever you want with your money. And it's like, well, that's not, because I thought that the IRS rule of it needs to be used equally and not individually. I actually thought that was a UIL rule. Like I brought it to the boosters thinking that it was a UIL rule and like, hey, we can't just have individual funds for Disney. We have to do this group thing. And I later find out, I think from one of your original podcasts or posts, that it's actually an IRS thing. So I was like, okay, well, at least we're still following the rules. They were just the wrong people's rules.
Right.
But UIL, as far as boosters go, is very unclear. They have a big, athletic-wise, there's big do's and don'ts for UIL regulations, but there isn't as much for bands and how the boosters operate in that UIL realm.
See, I've found regulations through the UIL for boosters. There's even allegedly, a handbook for arch boosters within the UIL. I'll have to track that down. But
you get your hands on that. You can forward that to me. I would greatly like to. Like I said, I even talked to people on the phone that were in charge of our area for music boosters, and really kind of walked away with not a clear, concise direction from them either.
Yeah, and it might be also because the enforcement logic isn't as strong there. The IRS logic is. I've seen the IRS come in and enforce things on people that I didn't think they would ever enforce, but they do that. There's a trigger that will set them off, but I know that UIL has a lot of regulations around boosters and how they're supposed to behave, and maybe it's more, overarching with the athletics because, like everyone else, I look at an organization like that and they're talking sports, and I think that that's all they care about. But then there's just these little snippets in their policy that reference arts. And I'm like, oh, well, they look at this too. Because, again, everything in Texas is bigger. Marching band's a sport. So that's why it falls under the UIL. And there's things that you can do with your money and things that you can't. There's the 8-hour rehearsal rule. I learned that one just this year. And you would think that growing up in Oklahoma, that I would know about this rule, but I didn't. There's an 8-hour rehearsal rule that pertains to high school marching bands. They're not allowed to rehearse for more than 8 hours outside of classroom time in a given week. Or it's just not fair.
That on top of that too, they can't even start learning drill. Like we can have band camp and do fundamentals, but they can't even start actually learning drill until August. And that's a UIL rule as well.
See, something else I just learned. That's insane. And to think that my friend who lives in Texas that writes drill hasn't shared that one with me. But that's the thing. Every state, we can easily say every state's different. But also, for the majority, most of them, when it comes to boosters and what we can and can't do, they're mostly the same. Except for Texas and California. They're pretty different. I even have a California-only booster episode sitting in my editing doc that I haven't gotten to yet because it, too, was really long. I mean, the amount of information I had to dig up to put those together in a concise way was just massive. And a lot of it's very similar to what we do across the country, but there are these little nuanced things that are very specific to California and very specific to Texas that people need to pay attention to. And that's where I think we get into trouble inside of these large groups that span tens of thousands of people and cross literally every border across the country. And they're like, well, that group does it, or that group does it, or, you know, the program next door to me does it. Why is this a problem? And that's because everybody's a little bit different. You hear me talk about auditing a lot, and you will hear a lot of people push back and say, well, we've never been audited. I don't know anyone that's been audited. But then you look at someone from California and they're like, well, we're audited every year. And then someone jumps in, well, that's not a real audit. Let me say something about California. Those are real audits. California has an audit culture. At any given moment, the state of California can walk in and audit your organization, and they do it frequently. I sat in a board meeting with a California booster about midway through last season, and there was the district auditor at the meeting. And I thought that was so weird. And then the president told me after the meeting, he's like, oh yeah, she's here at every meeting. And that just goes to show you that the operational culture can be different from state to state, and it can be drastically different. I mean, I've never seen an auditor in any of my booster meetings. I've never been in another booster meeting in person where there was an auditor sitting in the room. I don't know anybody in any state other than California that has had a meeting with an auditor present. And it just puts a whole different lens on it and a whole different kind of gravity that people don't realize. And I think a lot of our new parents come into these things and they're thinking, oh, this is just a casual, informal parent organization, and we're just going to kind of help out our kids. But they don't understand the gravity of what can happen when we start to drift in the compliance world. And that's where we hear the phrases like, well, we've always done it that way. And that may be true, but that doesn't make you immune to compliance risk when the IRS is involved. I mean, I think every single one of us have a little bit of fear of that organization because we really don't know what they mean or what they can do or what they're capable of. We just know they're always there watching us and watching what we're doing. So with that new parent statement, you know, the new parents come in and they think it's casual and that it's not that big of a deal, or as my kids like to say, it ain't that deep, bro. But what should... I mean, how well does your booster onboard new parents, and what should every new parent know before they walk into their first booster meeting?
Well, just like a lot of other boosters, we obviously have an issue with getting people to show up. When they do, they're hesitant, but they very much, you know, like we've changed how we approach people and all that other stuff. And like, you know, you and I had that discussion on the last roundtable where we've tried all the things to try to get more volunteers. But when we do have the new ones come in, like this year, we have a lot of parents that are ready and willing and able and excited to get involved. But I don't think that they even truly, even though we lay it all out there, don't truly understand how much they're going to be involved. But I've seen in the past that, you know, we have a couple that
they're freshmen this year, so they've already been in it for 2 years, and those parents are slowly starting to come around more. Like they're the parents that kind of hang out on the sideline and, oh, what can I do? Or like when we're cooking at a competition, they're there and they're present, and we ask them, hey, do you want to help? Or hey, can you do this? They'll do it, but they're still kind of very standoffish. And then now those parents are the ones that are right there in the middle cooking the food now this year and stuff like that. So I think that's just more hesitant of, let me stand back and see how this goes before I just get, head in first. We have a couple parents that are like that are, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And very willing. But for the majority, it's a slow process. And they really don't come around to, pushing props out on the field or leaving the stands early to go get food ready for the kids so they can eat real quick before they go to finals and stuff like that. But eventually, most of them either they come around or they disappear. It's one or the other. But they're very hesitant at first. And I think that something that they would, we've made it a plan this year to tell them, it is a lot. It's rewarding, but it's a lot of work. You don't have good reward without good work. Is kind of what we're kind of motivating people to say is, you're going to put in a lot of work, but the reward's going to be great to see what your kid is accomplishing and that you're a part of that for your kid.
Right. And I think a lot of us have this is an old perspective, but I still use it. It's not that old, but it's old enough. That we have in this current generation of parents is the Amazon mentality. We want instant gratification, instant reward for a little bit of work that we did. And I think culturally we need to help them understand that that's not the case here. That sometimes in very real situations is that reward that you're seeking, that reward that you want, that benefit that you want to present itself to you that says, hey, parent, you did a great job raising your kid. Sometimes that doesn't show up for 15 or 20 years. And it manifests in a way that will just, I mean, you've seen some of the posts I've made where I've referenced that, and 1,000 comments later, I have people telling me over and over and over again, well, I didn't plan on crying today. Thanks for that, Mike. But I mean, it's very real that it happens when your kid's an adult in many cases. And they're in the stands watching their kid in band. And that's when they realize what they did, what the parents did for them. And that's when it comes full circle. And that's why this whole thing is so meaningful, but it's also going to have delayed rewards. And if there is a way that we can make the new parents understand that, I think we'd be in a much better place. But I haven't yet figured out how to do that. And that's just, I think a lot of it's just going to have to come from open communication with the parents, like you guys are doing. Like, yeah, it's hard. It's going to be a lot. Some of us are going to spend every moment that we're away from work helping support our kids, but you're helping support your kid. And that's the important part, because the kid's going to remember that you were there. The kid's going to remember that you gave some of yourself. And because kids are what they are right now, and let's just be honest, they're selfish, they're self-centered, they're not going to see the work you're doing as having any real sort of value to them until much later. And you just have to be okay with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and one defining moment for me and a lot of other parents last year, we set up like a home base for these kids. Like we have 3-4 canopies, they're in the shade. One competition we competed very early, but we weren't going to lead. So like our home base, we have the carpets that we lay out and all this other stuff. And one defining moment for us as far as this hard work is paying off is just sitting there and watching the kids all interact with each other. Seeing that band family together, no stress, no nothing, having a good old time with each other. Us as parents sitting back and watching that was kind of a defining moment for us last year as we're doing something right.
Right. And I mean, it's those little moments that we tend to miss. I missed one that happened right in front of my face just a couple of weeks ago when we were getting a theater production ready for my youngest kids. It was a K-5 theater group. And we just got new microphones, and they were originally just supposed to be used on middle school kids, but we had littles on the stage, and it's hard to hear them, no matter how much might they have behind them. So we decided, let's just mic them. And so we did. And for all of these kids, this was the first time they've ever put on a head-worn microphone. It's the first time they had an adult come up and wire them up with a mic and tape it to their face, just like they've seen the same kind of mics on a Broadway actor. Because even though these kids are K through 5, most of the people in this community theater are coming from a strong theater roots family. And so they've seen these things. And also with the rise of the musical again with Wicked and Hamilton. And I mean, we're just seeing these things in real time in real media spaces. So we have exposure to it like we didn't have before. And so these kids knew what was happening. They're getting a microphone like they've seen the people on Broadway wear. And that's just the coolest thing. To me, that's just another step in the process, because I am a sound designer and an audio engineer, and I put microphones on people every day. So it's nothing big, it's nothing unusual. But the executive director of the theater came to me after we had mic'd up all the kids, and she says, "Hey, did you notice any of the kids after you put the mic on them? Did you see their posture? Did you see the look on their face?" And I'm like, "No, why?" She says, "Every kid that came through your line walked away standing at least 2 feet taller." And it was in that moment that I realized that those kids now realized that they weren't just watching a show come together. They were now officially a part of it. They were a part of the magic. And, that's the growth that we want to see for our kids, and it's not the growth that we always see. I saw a bunch of shy little kids that talk like little mice suddenly get louder, suddenly find confidence, suddenly find a place where they belong. And the same thing happens here inside of the marching band or the concert band or the percussion ensemble. The kid finds a place. And I really want to make sure that the parents understand and connect to the fact that this is what the work is for. It's not the competition. It's not the show. It's not the rating at the state evaluation. It's your kid. And you may not see that growth. You may not see that gift for years. So that's what I want the parents to understand. So let me ask you this, and then we'll hop off of here, because we've been on here for 45 minutes and we got a lot to work with here. But what should every returning parent remember before the new families arrive?
They need to remember that they walked in their shoes before. That's something that I personally have had to struggle with, is coming in and telling people, do AB. That's why we change stuff around, is because we have these new parents come in and say, "How can I help?" And then we just rattle off A, B, C, and D, and then you have the deer in headlights look, because they don't understand. Us returning parents have been in it for a while. We know the lingo. We know what's to expect. We kind of work like a well-oiled machine. We have to remember that these other ones that are coming in that are new may not know at all what to do. Right. And that we need to have some grace and know that, okay, this is a teaching moment. Let me show you. If you want to be a part of this organization and you want to do this with your kid, here's where to start.
Yeah, they're not oiled like you guys are. And I think that's where a lot of the friction comes from is, you don't have oil, you're going to get friction and parts are going to break down. And you have that's a nice little metaphor that I just made up. But anyway, you got parents that come in and they see that, and that just instantly disconnects them, because everybody else is functioning in a way that they don't know how to function yet. So they feel like an outsider and they step away. Kind of like Homer Simpson tucking away into that bush. It's kind of like that. They come along and they're like, "Oh, this is really cool. I'm really excited. I can't wait to really plug in and support my kid." And I don't know anybody here. And they all have their own language. I don't fit in.
That was me when I first started, because we weren't only new to the band, but we had just moved to the community. Not but 2 years earlier. So we still didn't even know parents, students. Like, we were still meeting people and stuff like that. And walking into it, when I first started, it was very cliquish. Even though it was small, it was very cliquish.
Yeah.
And so we've definitely worked hard to get away from that too, and be very encompassed, and everybody's equal and everybody has a say. And I was one of those parents where I was like, almost like, okay, do I really want to do this? And it just worked out that we had a lot of senior parents, so we were able to just kind of start from scratch again.
Well, I'm glad you're doing the work you're doing with your group. It sounds like you guys are headed in a very healthy direction. And, if we can just copy and paste that to other groups around the area, that would be great. But we can't. We're just going to take it one person at a time. And, here's one final question I want to ask you, because I asked this at the booster group I walked into and it threw them. And so I'm going to ask you, and this is going to pertain specifically to your booster group, booster parent to booster parent, and for all the other parents listening that want to come on to this segment with us and have these discussions where I'm going to ask you questions. We're just going to talk through things. I will ask you this question. So this gives you time to prepare. Christine, you're going to be the guinea pig. At the end of the year, what does success look like for your booster group?
That is a tough one. Success is returning. People wanting, not feeling like they're obligated, but wanting to come back and do it again.
Yes.
Because that's how you keep people, that's how you retain. As far as the boosters goes, as far as the parent goes, as long as the kids, same thing with the kids, the program as a whole is doing a good job if the kids are having fun and want to come back. And the boosters, because we're the support system, are a part of that. We're a part of that success for the kids as well. And if you don't have those people that want to engage and want to come back and want to build it, then it wasn't a successful year. And I feel like these past couple of years we've done that. My goal, my kid's going to be a senior in 2 years, and my goal is to always, leave something better than what it was when I came. And I feel like we're working towards that. And to be able to have those tools where you have a successful year after year, to where you get more people wanting to do it and seeing how it is from the outside, and people saying, hey, I want to be part of that organization.
Very good. Well, I will just, say a quick sign off, and then Christine, you and I can stay here and talk for a few minutes once we end. But, parents, there you have it. Real discussion with a real booster board member living real life in Texas, in one of the most complex states to do this activity in, next to California. But you have enough information to work with there to help your new parents get started this year. I've said this to my kids, and I'll say this to this group, and I'll say it all the time. You can have a great year. You can have a perfect year. But I will always encourage you to improve the next year, because there's always room for improvement. There really is no such thing as perfection. And perfection is not what we want anyway. We just want a safe place, a comfortable place for parents to engage with the kids and the program and help the program grow. That's why we're here. And I've had posts that have gone viral where I've said it's more than just the music, and it is. This isn't just about the music. This is about the growth of our students, the growth of our kids. And that's why we're here. That's why we support. We don't do this to elevate our status inside of the community. We're here to elevate our kids. So this has been Mike with Christine and SoundstageEDU, and we'll continue these moving forward. I'm not sure what we'll call it yet, but we'll continue with this because I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.